Hello, everybody, and welcome to the disco panel. I'm just going to call it that now. Disco panel. Just kidding. This is the Klingon Culture and You panel, and I am completely thrilled and honor-filled, like a true Klingon, to be here with a bunch of amazing Star Trek Discovery Klingon actors and Federation actor and Klingon dialect and translation experts. This is a panel that I have dreamt of for a long time, actually. So let's, first of all, we wanted to say a big thank you.
Have weird dreams.
I do have weird dreams. A lot of them involve Klingons. What can I say? First of all, thank you so much to Eagle Moss, Hero Collector, for sending us these amazing Klingon ships. And Jayne even is displaying some other ships. Jayne, which ones were those? You got Discovery
I have
too, right?
Discovery and Enterprise are at the front, and then the Klingon ships are at the back. Wait, can you see?
Yeah, we can see them. Yeah.
Very nice. They're beautiful, beautiful.
They're truly gorgeous. They sent us these ships because we're doing a panel on Klingons, and thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Look at that detail. It's incredible.
Gorgeous. They're stunning.
Yeah.
Beacon of Kailash. Anyway.
Yes.
I'm gonna
So I wanted to start us off by asking, kind of like starting from the beginning of the process and going throughout timeline wise, Rea and Robyn. So Rea, you are a Klingon dialect and voice coach, and Robyn, you are a Klingon language expert, and you translated for Star Trek Discovery. So I wanted to know what you two, what are your, like, what was the way that you both got into Klingon as language study?
Well, Rea got there from me, so I should probably start.
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
There was in 1986 or so, this book, the Klingon Dictionary, published. This is the first edition, and I bought it in a bookstore and looked at it and was like, "Hey, this is kind of a joke, but you could actually learn this language. I wonder if anybody else has." And it took me about 6 years to find other people that had, and that was the Klingon Language Institute. And gradually, all of us got better and better at the language, so that when Discovery was conceived of, and somebody asked somebody, well, who's a Canadian that can translate Klingon for us? I was like, the one. And then, I mean, while I speak the language and can translate the language, it's a very special talent to teach actors how to say the words, and not only to support them in the language, but to support them in ways that I'm sure that the actors are going to talk about. And so Rea and I and another vocal coach, we met, and it was like a mini convention. It was like the best convention ever. The three of us in a hotel room in Toronto, and all I got to do for like 2 days was teach them Klingon.
Yeah, that was my sort of baptism by fire. It was, I think, probably in terms of my career, one of the most memorable events involved with the work that I do. I am a voice coach, and I work as a dialect coach, obviously, on film sets. But, you know, it's interesting what you're saying, Robyn. Your work is about what they're saying. And because it's a constructed language, not so many people know how to say it. So you taught me how to say it. And then I transfer the how and develop the why they're saying it with the actors. So I usually think of language that way. You know, there's what you're saying, why you're saying it, and how you're saying it. So the how and the what, that's language, and the why is very much voice. And it kind of bleeds into the acting, but with a language that's not your own, if it's just random sounds, it will not really translate as meaning to the audience. So these brilliant creators were able to kind of do the reverse of language learning, which is, you know, sort of inside out, innate, feel it, and then figure out what it means. We had what it meant, and then we had to feel into it, and then drop that into the experience of the Klingon race. And I'm really excited to hear from the actors about the breadth, the scale of incarnating this culture.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, great. So speaking of the actors, now timeline wise, you know, we have the vocal coach and the translator who are on board. This probably didn't happen in this exact order, but in my brain, this is how it worked. But so for the actors, going back in your timeline, what was the audition process like? And also, how did you research going into your first audition as a Klingon? And I know there's going to be differences because you audition in different ways and at different times, and it wasn't in Klingon, but did you have some level of Klingon research that you did before your audition?
I'll start. Hello, everyone. First, I just want to say it's a blessing to be here and with all of these people. I'm meeting Robyn for the first time, to be honest. So it's amazing to be here. So thank you. As far as my audition, I actually was in this room that I'm in right now. I put myself on tape, and the truth is the casting directors made a decision to not tell us that we were actually auditioning as Klingons. They changed the name of the alien species in the script, so it was very secretive. So the initial reading for me personally, I didn't even know that I was auditioning to play a Klingon until my screen test when I was live with Bryan Fuller. I did my first reading, and I believe the name of the species that they changed it to was an Argot. The character referred to the species in the speech several times, and when I was done, Bryan Fuller said, "That was great, but what the hell are you saying?" And he said, "You realize you're a Klingon, right?" And I went, "Holy fucking shit." That's awesome. And then I knew, I kind of knew exactly how to slot into that. And I redid the scene, and thankfully got the job a couple hours later on the cab ride home. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I love that. It's such a good story. Not realizing you're a Klingon. I have a long, medium, and short version of my casting, but initially L'Rell was written to be this commander in the first 2 episodes, and luckily my 6 foot tall frame and my angular features and my Juilliard training were big pluses. CBS had seen my showcase, my 4th year showcase. And so I had somewhat of a relationship with casting that way. And Bryan Fuller as well had seen me in a different show recently, around the time that they were starting to cast. And I feel very fortunate that it was kind of a perfect marriage of a lot of people trusting what I was capable of. And then I was cast in that August. And similar, I think, to Ken, I know that part of our casting happened at a certain time because they needed to get the actual casting of our bodies to start creating the designs. So I remember I was in New York when I got the official letter saying, like, you are, casting this thing. And I couldn't tell anyone. I was visiting friends, and everyone's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, "Great." But I remember literally the day I got home, I went to Alchemy Studios and got cast up because they needed to start working right away. Because at the time it was going to be starting to film in October. And then that was when I started doing the research and watching all the Klingon episodes and got the Klingon dictionary and all that. So I didn't do any of that before I was cast. But in order to placate my nervousness, that's what I started doing once I was.
great.
I didn't know that I was what I was auditioning for. I knew it was an alien species, and then it also didn't even say the name of the show. It was called like I won't say the code name because who knows. But yeah, I didn't know, and then I got a call when I was dog walking. I had like 3 dogs on a leash, and my agent called, and I was like, ah! And the dogs were like, what's happening? Yeah. So I, again, like Mary, just I dove right in after that, after going to Alchemy, and it was a very claustrophobic experience, but
yes,
we got through it.
We made it.
Like, full plaster all over and just breathing through a straw. It's amazing. It's crazy what they do.
And how long do you have to sit with that on?
How long was it?
Is it like a 45
minutes?
Yeah, maybe 45 minutes.
Yeah.
45 minutes, depending on the different, and they space it out. Like I know when I first went in and we did, chest and face, and then you do hands. And then later on, I had to do the body from the waist up, which was hilarious because I literally was like just in this thing and everyone like, fully just out there, real fun. But yeah, they try and space it out a bit. But yeah, I think, and there's like layers, like 4 different layers of different colored goop. And I'm sure there's a better term than goop. But it definitely looked like fun goop that I used to play with. And then the cast goes on top of all those layers. And all of the prosthetic is 3D printed, like from those models once they design it. It's insane. Every day a new 3D printed prosthetic.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I didn't realize it was new every day. And David, so yes, can you tell us about your audition approach process?
I too was originally invited to be part of the show, asked by Brian Fuller, and for a completely different character, actually. And then there were a number of creative changes, and I didn't know what was happening. And then I got a call out of the blue, what I consider being a Klingon. And I was just like, yes. Yes, I would consider that. And then I went in and I read for the part of Orek, and a couple days later, it was that. So I knew I was auditioning for, at this point, I knew I was auditioning for the Klingon, but I did not know I would be speaking in Klingon. Yeah. So within 4 days, I got an email like, oh, here are your Klingon audio files. And I was like, your what?
Yeah. I remember, David was one of the first people I met, castmates, because we had this initial Klingon meeting, and we met with Robyn and Rea, and with the various creatives at the time. And I remember David and I also just hit it off right away, and it was wonderful. But I do remember that was such an insane and exciting time. Because it was January and we were up there in Toronto, and it was just like getting the feel of Pinewood Studios, and suddenly we're there speaking these scenes for the first time, and
not being able to talk about it. Like, I didn't tell anyone for a year I was on the show, so I could, when I walked in the room and saw Mary, not only did we instantly bond, but I could I'm in this experience, and I can talk about it with you.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I want to ask Jayne. So you are our Federation representative here, Admiral Cornwell. And the reason why we wanted to have you here is because you have the very unique experience of having spent a lot of time working opposite a Klingon. And so I wanted to know, how does that affect your process as an actor, like working with actors who are in heavy prosthesis, who are immersed in this alien culture? Does that change how you approach your own process as an actor?
The short answer to that is no, it doesn't really. But I just have to go back a little bit, listening to all of you. First of all, it's an honor to be here with all the Klingons and translators and speech, because I'm smiling while you guys are telling your stories. Because when I was called and told, hey, Jayne, you have an offer to do, there's a new Star Trek series. They want you to, you have an offer. And I said, my first words out of my mouth, human or alien? Because in my head, I'm thinking, of all the casting they have to do, you know, and all the hours of makeup. And I was like, 45 minutes of hair and makeup or 3 or 4 hours? You know? Well, anyway, they said human. I said, good. And because I'm in awe of everything that you guys had to do, and Ken's stories of having all the lines all over his living room. But in terms of acting, I mean, I thought about this, and what's cool about actors is they always, just as creatives, take whatever's in front of them. So if you read a script and you're told you're speaking to a two-headed woman, you're like, okay, you know. I mean, it just becomes the reality. So what was cool about it, especially in those first scenes, the first really meaty scenes, which I would say, I mean, I have to think back, but season 1, the really meaty scenes came with L'Rell and, you know, and Cornwell. And it's kind of cool how Star Trek in general, and those two characters in particular, speak very broadly to how to approach the other with a capital O. I mean, my character thought she was going to die, but also we had the ability to come to great respect for the other who was so different from us. And I don't know, it feels profound at this moment in time. So it didn't affect my process of acting because I just entered the scene that was written for us. But it did inform, I think of it all these years, I mean, these couple of years later, and I think, wow, that's kind of a cool comment on two persons of different species meeting each other.
Yeah, that was, I mean, it was such a special time, and there was a whole, that episode itself, it was like a week, we knew we were going to be there, but we hadn't gotten the script, and knew we had a lot of Klingon, and then I knew I was interacting with Jayne, and we were all on, Ken and Jayne and I were all on the same flight from LA to Toronto.
I didn't know that, but you had to tell me.
Well, I love this story because Ken had been in the scene that Claire was also in the previous episode, and I'd arrived at the gate, and Ken texted me and said, "The Admiral's behind you."
I had no idea who Ken was or Claire because they were in their makeup, so I didn't see them. And I never met them.
And then exactly. We had that was my intro to Jayne. I said, "Oh, I guess we're going to work together." And we had a day. We got there on that Tuesday. We had gotten the script. I remember reading it all and going over it on the plane ride. And then Jayne, to her lovely credit and to the credit of all the actors I've worked with on the show, everyone is so willing to meet back at the hotel and run lines, and particularly that spoke Klingon. I mean, the first time I heard Ken speaking Klingon when we had a rehearsal, it's just such an amazing, you know, everyone goes above and beyond. But with Jayne, I hadn't gotten to know her yet, but we had a scene on Thursday, and we had one day, and we had our fight choreography on that Wednesday. And that went really well, and Jayne's super badass. And I was like, oh, and I said, would you be willing to run lines back at the hotel? And she said, yeah. And so we really did get to work on the scene and get to know each other, even though it was very, you know, a brief amount of time. But also I think we have an energetic connection. And I'm so grateful that we had that, because then we kind of entered that first day of working together, and Jayne screamed right back at me in such an awesome way. It was a really special
scene. Yeah. It's iconic. Like that moment is just iconic. It's amazing.
Well, it's one of those weird things because you see in the script this bizarre, like, I know Mary kind of came to me. I don't know, Mary, if this is the way you remember, but there is a little bit of a, what the hell are we going to do with this? Because it's like, it's just a line, you know, it's just a stage direction that they scream. And so, I mean, you just know that you have to go for it 150, 200%, or you're just going to look like the biggest jerk, you know. but also to give it, it was such an extreme moment, and in giving it your all, you realize, at least from Cornwell's point of view, that she is about to die, but she's not gonna give an inch, you know. She's gonna go down fighting. Yeah, and that's what really established the relationship. We had fun doing that. Yeah,
we did.
Again.
Sorry?
Again.
Do it again. Oh my God, scream on Zoom.
Oh no, we'll blow people's ears out.
Funniest scream story is when, the Klingon death howl. Somebody, said, well, what is this Klingon death howl? Can we get, from the translator, how this is supposed to work? And so, I had to pull out a tape recorder and do a Klingon death howl and send it.
And then you became the maker of the Klingon death howl. Yeah.
No, I wasn't. I should have just sent them a link to the original episode that people did it. And, show this story. This is Klingons on screen doing it. But instead, I remember emailing, the other person that knew it this time and saying, I just got paid to scream into a tape recorder.
Yeah.
Is it too much to ask can we just get one Klingon death howl? Maybe step away from your mic.
All together?
Back up and just give something, right?
Whoever wants to.
Oh, it's got to be a group thing. Is there somebody that we need to remember?
I don't know.
Lead us in, Robyn. Coach us in. Just give us an example and then we'll all respond.
Okay, well, this is coming from your heart, and you're warning the other Klingons who are already in Stovak Core that another warrior is coming to join them. So you want to throw your head back, and so you're putting your voice and your heart into this howl. You guys can just join in.
I'm just watching as Cornwell because I'm.
Cultural experience.
If we were on set, this is the moment where Rea comes up to us and tells us that we need to do it again.
Or more death howl. Just the death howl. Oh, thank you for that. That definitely scratched an itch for me. Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to come back to the learning of the lines and that whole process, because now we have the Klingon experts and the actors interfacing with the scripts. So we've already heard bits and pieces of that. So Robyn, you were recording some things for them so that they could hear that how they were pronounced. You were also taking the scripts and fully translating them into Klingon, right?
Yes, I would get the script with everything that people were supposed to say in Klingon. And I would comb through that. I would ask back my questions. Like if a Klingon says, you do something, then I have to say, are they addressing one person or multiple people? Because that's different in Klingon. And those sorts of questions, just to clarify any vocabulary. And think about if there's difficult stuff. Do my translation. At one point, there was, I think it was, they were talking to Volk and saying, you want to come into the fold. It was a biblical reference. And I said, well, look, Klingons don't have a biblical reference. Do you really want him to be addressing his fellow Klingon and saying, you want to behave like a domestic, herbivore? And they were like, oh, no, that's not quite right. So I got to make a change in the script there. But once we figured out what the lines had to be, I'd write them in Klingon. And then I've posted on Twitter a little example of this. I'd read underneath what each Klingon word means, because Klingon words aren't in the same order as English words. And, might be one Klingon word means 3 English words or vice versa. So they're kind of grouped with underneath. And I would also read into tape recorder, normal speed, slower, even slower, and back to normal speed. And the actors are going to be nodding and smiling because that's they've heard it over and over again. And I'd send all this to Rea, and she would process it.
Yeah, and that processing is basically, me taking and making, each actor has their own way of how they want to hear the lines, maybe once at regular speed and then 5 times slow and then twice at medium speed and then 3 times at regular, however, everybody has their own preference. So I'd sort of do the admin of distribution of the material, making sure that it's collated properly. And then we just sort out our 1-on-1 time or 2-on-1 time, and we just go at it. And that would bring up all manner of questions regarding language and why we say what we say and what we choose not to say. Of course, the Klingon language is very direct, very clear. There's no sort of prevaricating. They say what they mean and they mean what they say, so there's not a lot of game playing in terms of what is said. And so we, you know, I'm the lucky one who just got to work with these brilliant people who tell you more about what it is to take in sounds that are not innate in your own experience and bring them to life and make them sing, have meaning.
Wow.
And if the actor's supposed to say Klingon mach, Rea's job is to tell them how to make their tongue and their throat make those noises.
Mm-hmm. And something that I've spoken to before on panels, but it's the first time getting to be on a panel with Robyn and Rea, which is so thrilling. But Rea is so skilled at recalibrating to each actor's needs. Like, we'll all testify that we all have very different techniques in how we like to memorize, how we like to work. But, you know, I was very grateful. For us, it was a lot of these 2-hour sessions where the word for word translation was what I really gravitated towards. And we would do, I would say it in the order that it would be in English, and then the Klingon sentence by sentence. And Rea would very kindly do the same for the opposite lines. And really let that be and I would record that, and that would be a big part of my process as we went on. Of course, near the beginning, it was so much of just learning what those sounds were and listening to Robyn's wonderful translation. Always a delight to get those. But that's kind of where and then at a certain point, you become more familiar with the symbols in correlation to the sounds. So by season 2, we had a pretty strong system when it came to, I have a pretty strong sense, and finding ways, because it's the first time that the language has been so comprehensive in scenes. Like, there's been a lot of on the bridge and such, but we had a lot, particularly near the beginning, and figuring out what those rhythms were, and within the sentences where the inflection was, and how to, you know, really still hit all of those intense sounds without it being one note. Emotionally. So Rea was a huge part of that. And I say Rea has known L'Rell more than any other director or writer, because she has been with her from the very beginning till the very end. We've always had a conversation about the character in addition to the language. So I just wanted to give that love there to Rea. She's
still with me.
Yeah, yes, she is. Well.
A little baby L'Rell pin.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Kenneth, so it was brought up before that your memorization process was visual, right? So you were, what was your process exactly? You stuck like things up on the wall?
Was definitely part of it. It was a whole bunch of different things going on simultaneously. But first I want to say that, you know, the language is incredibly difficult, and I commend the show for even trying to tackle it and add that layer and complexity to the show. And then, you know, it's also very collaborative, as you can see. And, you know, I commend the team for getting this done. It was really difficult. And I really think the show lucked out. When we got hired, like I had mentioned, we didn't know how to do the Klingon language, and it takes a lot of effort and complexities. And I think they lucked out, to be honest, with this great group of people here, to tackle that and have the patience and the dedication to take it on. And then that also continued through to the writers and the producers and the editors. Trying to edit this stuff together was incredibly difficult. And for me, it was a lot about memorization to begin with. And I used visual aids. I would retype out the translations and make big billboards and stick them on my walls, and it really looked like the Matrix, like where all the numbers are falling down. It's just this jumble of letters, and thank God Robyn and Rea with their, dedication, and I would listen and fall asleep to Robyn's voice every night. So it is, again, lovely to finally meet her. And then it was just about repetition and building and building and building. Now, that being said, while that is happening, I'm also adding the meaning of the words and trying to connect the sounds with the meanings, because obviously as an actor, communicating the emotions is the most important part. But what's great about that Klingon language is it's very visceral and physical, and it allows you to express the emotions and the intent through the language. And the language inevitably ended up becoming a big part of creating these characters and rounding them off and figuring out who they were and what they what their character was like and their intentions and their so I commend this whole team right here for the job that they did and the influence they had on helping create the characters that I played. I hope you guys recorded that, because in my head it sounded pretty good.
That was excellent. Yes.
It really.
I remember Claire and I was going to ask Claire and David about, did you have any type of like other language skills? Because you're Canadians. Do you know French? And did that help you learn Klingon? Okay.
I did this weird like physical, I also find myself doing it now with just plain English lines, where I'd have like attach a physical gesture to each syllable. Like nushuvka, I would have like new, and then like shoo. Like I would, not necessarily that literal, but like especially like attach it to the meaning of the word, and find some sort of physical thing. That helped me to memorize. But I just remembered Ken telling a joke. One had a joke in it was actually the scene where we take Jayne. And there was a line, I didn't even remember what the joke was in English, but I remember you telling a joke in Klingon, and every take I was like, that's the funniest thing I've ever, like I would burst out laughing because it didn't matter what the words were. And I think that's what was at the heart of like what Rea and Robyn showed us, was like, it doesn't matter if you're saying like, I don't know, like, it doesn't matter. But you can tell a joke with those sounds and it's funny as hell. Like, I just thought that Ken was so amazing. Like, everyone was just so amazing.
Awesome.
I love that she's like coming out with actual Klingon I can understand from 2 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
That is very impressive.
Yeah. Getting Robyn's approval, I remember just getting an email here and there when she was going through for ADR to just like check stuff. And anytime it was like, sounds great, I was like, yes!
Oh, yeah.
Victory!
Amazing.
Yep. Sometimes it was like, really busy, and I'm just sort of going and like trying to find, like some tight deadlines, just, trying to, point out what needs to be redone. And I have to remember that, the stuff that doesn't need to be redone is like, holy shit, these people actually like, learned this and said this, and some of it's really hard, as Ken said. And really impressed with all of them. Like just the amount of dedication that went into it from day one, meeting people when they came in that first session with me and Rea. Everybody brought like their whole, their energy and their whole honest self. That was incredibly exciting.
And I think the major thing that was driving us was the fans and just wanting to do this justice. And that extends to the Klingon community and the culture. And we had a responsibility. And I think that was ultimately what drove us to give it our all. Claire is right. Ultimately, it was about the expression, the emotion, but if we can also nail exactly the proper words and language, then, you know, we're doing the best job we can. And I was very proud of everyone. That being said, I was incredibly happy when they introduced the universal train.
I think one of the stories that we haven't told, I mean, we're being very polite and excited at, because it's probably the most unique job any of us will ever do. But there'd be times where, you know, where there'd be these speeches that were, you know, hugely important. And the first draft would have quite a long paragraph, and you'd have actors really, really working. And then, of course, this happens in live television. Well, it's not live anymore, but, you know, recorded television, very tight schedules. The writers would look, you know, say, no, we need to cut this and we need to insert this here. And so it would start a whole process of resorting which line comes where, and who, sometimes characters would switch who was saying which line, and you'd think, oh, you can't do that. You can't, because, you know, we work so hard to get it down and get camera ready. And then the night before or 30 hours before, they'll go, let's go, let's change, let's cut this, let's add this. And, you know, so these actors were, you know, A game every time, all around. Like, I never heard anyone say, like, I'm done, I quit, I refuse. Anyone, any challenge, anyone on this panel today would basically just say, give it to me, let's get it, we're gonna do this. And it's really fun, you know, it's really inspiring to think, like, we did this, we did this.
Yeah, I remember that episode 8, because I had all those scenes with Jayne, and the next day Ken and I had 2 substantial Klingon scenes, and we had gotten that script not even a week before. And we did have to ask for cue cards, but I gotta say, to our credit, we had them as backup, but we pulled it out. And that Friday we filmed until 6 a.m. And it was the whole bit with Cole, the first when I come to the ship, and then after when he puts the paint on me. I mean, it's intense stuff. It's a lot. And I remember near that end where he's putting the paint on and we're there and we're looking at each other, and there would be moments where my brain was so fried, I just go, Rea, what is it? And she would like scream from Video Village, like, da 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 da. And I'd be like, thank you. And then I'd say it, you know, we got it. And I remember particularly the 3 of us turning to each other, and Rhea's like, you did it, guys. You did it real well. And it's just like such a gratifying feeling to just, send that sense of ensemble and community, and that we're doing it for a larger whole is just, it's the best feeling in the world. It's exhausting, but
that is incredible. And also, you're in prosthetics too, just adding that layer.
Oh, right.
3-hour makeup calls for prosthetics.
Right. It's very impressive, I will say. I mean, the work that you all put into creating Klingons on camera for Discovery is just super impressive. I want to give a shout out to both Mary and Claire for being like creating these characters who are playing these characters who are like strong women who are like, now, you know, Dennas is the head of her house. L'Rell is the Chancellor. Like, how has that experience been to get to like step into these shoes? And also Lursa and Grilka and all the other Klingon women, how did they play into like you embodying these characters?
Mary and I really, one of the first things we connected on, we had this lovely, remember that day when we just walked around together? We're like, this is it, you know, we're Klingon sisters now.
Yeah, I do. I remember that.
Oh, it was so magical. Like, we connected over what a special opportunity as a woman in film and television to play a role that has nothing to do with what you look like. And how empowering that was. And
we're both 6 feet, which is always exciting to meet a fellow 6-foot lady. Exactly. That's sort of the thing that I've come to appreciate. I mean, in watching all of the female Klingons from the past, for sure. And I do Grilka It's just one of my faves. Because she just stands in her power. And I rewatched her episodes recently, and she just has this, what I felt, you know, certainly what Claire and I strive to do was have the balance, or embodying the masculine and the feminine, which to me, you know, is where we need to be, is this allowance for that to be in balance with all of us. And you know, it's fun because in the first season, L'Rell's a commander, so actually, you know, Dennas is this embodiment of that, with her jewelry and her power, and just like, I love in that first scene with Kol, and when they're the holograms, and just the way that she owns herself within the dynamic of all these other male Klingons. So I certainly found inspiration from observing Dennas, because L'Rell very much sees herself from the shadows and doesn't want to be in the spotlight. And so that journey for her to kind of ascend into literally having everyone call her mother, which is the most archetypal thing, but to have a character too, exactly, like her femininity is a huge part of who she is. And it's really something that I've been examining a lot lately within myself as a human as well, is that it's women standing in their own feminine power that is almost more intimidating to others sometimes, that we associate power with masculinity, but it's to see someone, and I did love the aesthetic change was a lot from the first to the second season, but what I found in the imagery was that the metaphor of she was embracing a more divine feminine archetype that is very scary for her as a leader, as well as for the other Klingons. It's something that obviously Kol-Sha doesn't care for much, which is, you know, obviously very relevant to what we witness a lot today. So that is, you know, I what's the gift of this character is that I just think her journey and her story are going to keep reverberating for me. I'm literally this week, those themes came back to me for various reasons, but it's so interesting that I keep looking back to my relationship to how L'Rell grew throughout the seasons. And by the end, when she comes in on that cleave ship in the finale, that I feel like that kind of perfect balance of that masculine and feminine energy is really exciting.
I just rewatched that last night, and you have a line that's like, and I thought my chancellorship would be bloodless.
Yes.
So good.
Yes.
You're just like laughing because you got smacked in the head. It's just, so good. And I agree. L'Rell's arc is very satisfying. It's just like really cool to see her come into her power that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. That was my favorite line, I think.
Yes. Yes. So I have a few questions from chat. We're running so short on time. I want to ask you all, so I could do this for another hour, but I'm not going to do that to you all because we're tired and we have lives outside of this. So from Bloodleaf Wow in the chat, they have a question. For the Klingon actors, how much of the voice heard in the series is your own, and how much is post-production modifications? And I know part of the answer to this, but I'd love to hear what the actual answer is.
I don't know if I know the exact percentage. I know that there is a level of reverb I know they added to L'Rell, but it's still the register that I delivered the lines in. But I think for certain scenes they would add reverb in certain places. And I actually dubbed a lot of my lines in the first season, again, because some prosthetic issues. So a lot of it was them just recalibrating it so it fit back into the space. So that's what I know about my stuff. I don't know about anyone.
Yeah, for me, I believe most of it is my voice, but like Mary said, they punch up the bass a little bit. Specifically, I know there's a moment for Kol when he gets stabbed and he yells. They really amplified the like a lion voice there that added to the character. I thought that it wasn't just my voice. And then with Tenavik, they I think altered that more than Kol or Kol-Sha, adding the deeper bass, but for the most part, I think it's my voice. Yeah, I tried hard to create voices that were nothing like the way I talk now.
Yeah.
That's amazing also, because you have three. Oh, sorry. You also had 3 different Klingons that you created, 3 distinct Klingon characters you created. So yeah, I'm sure that your voice was also part of like distinguishing those characters, right?
It really was. I think that I felt like I created a very distinct voice for Kol, and then with the success of that, I thought when it came to the other characters, it became instinctually to start there, or at least it was a good place to launch off with trying to figure out who these other characters were and how they were the same or different. And in the case with Kol-Sha, it was okay for him to sound similar to Kol because they were related, but I gave him an even more groggly and wretched voice compared to his son. And then with Tenavik, I felt like I had to go in a completely different direction to make him distinct, not only from Kol and Kol-Sha, but as a whole in the Klingon culture, just because he was so unique already. And the interesting thing about that, that I've spoke about on panels is I had to ask myself, do I have to sound like L'Rell or Vok because I was the son of them? And I came to the conclusion that I didn't, because nature versus nurture. I wasn't raised by them, so I gave myself permission to not necessarily sound like them, but I did give a few homage words. I don't know if you go back and watch the episode, you can try to pick up a few little Easter eggs. Especially when I say the word Kalish, I try to make it sound like Vok.
Vok has a very distinct Kalish.
Yeah.
Totally does. He totally does.
Yeah.
Great. I have another question from the chat. Letitia Lemon asks, for the actors, what one scene or event would you have loved to see your character do? Any particular bucket list scenes?
L'Rell beams Cornwell off of the Enterprise before it explodes, and they go off on a bunch of adventures together.
Yeah, that would be fun.
The rest of time.
Sort of spoiler, but still, it's cool. Yeah.
I like that one, Mary. Good.
It's a really good one.
That's all.
That's all.
I have a lot, but that's definitely one.
So, sir, you were asking what are some of the bucket list scenes we wanted?
Yeah, for your characters.
I honestly felt like Kol perished a little too early, and I would have loved to have snuck off in an escape pod instead of exploding. That's a little bit of a dream of mine, but I would love for him to return one day in the mirror world.
Yeah.
So
Ooh.
that definitely would be awesome.
That's a really cool. I would have loved to see that too. Yeah.
An interesting backstory to that is I originally was written to be in the mirror world to lead the resistance, but they ended up using Vok to do that part, and it ultimately made the most sense. And Shazad was so great at portraying the mirror world Vok. But originally I was excited to be able to do that. So I think that it's still kind of inside me that I would love to be able to return to a bit of a miracle.
Yeah.
And then my final answer is I want to play Prime Lorca.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be more appropriate to play that part on lower decks, where
Yes.
more of
Yep.
the cartoon version. Yeah.
Yeah, because we never actually meet, another sort of spoiler, but yeah, we never actually meet Prime Lorca, so why not?
Yeah.
One of the
I think
great
that's-
unsolved mysteries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually the other day talking with someone about the idea that like Prime Lorca teamed up with L'Rell to find Cornwell. Like there's a hole. You could just go crazy.
I love this. Yes, all the fanfic that's getting like spun into our heads now. Claire and Dave, do you have any bucket list scenes you would have liked?
I like Orek was killed in episode 4 off screen, but in my heart of hearts, I would love for him to be still alive and just helping the Chancellor, an ally and confidant. That would be,
Oh my God.
amazing.
In the first episode, Orek was the one who had the best Klingon, so I was like, can he take over the Empire? Can he take over the Empire?
Thank you very much.
Oh,
Thank you very much. I would love to see. Mary and I didn't get a lot of chance to play together, so I would love that.
Me too.
L'Rell scenes.
Mhm.
Yeah, Mary and I only had one scene together and we didn't get to talk to each other in it. So my dream would be that like we teamed up
Mhm.
somehow and, you know, turn the whole empire into a matriarchy. I think that would be
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Oh my God.
Yes.
That's that totally. I think an exploration of the women of the empire and how we can learn to become allies despite what our society tells us.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. I would
love
love
Jayne, do you have any bucket list scenes
I,
besides the one,
you know,
the perfect one?
any scene, Mary and I talked about it a lot. I think there was a lot of richness between L'Rell and Cornwell. That there's just room for the two groups to talk even more together, understand each other. I think that we just would have had a lot of fun doing more scenes.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to my mind, even before she saves me.
Yeah. Well, who knows? We could have been hanging out during
Yeah.
like, all the
all that time
things
that you were a
Empire.
prisoner,
Yeah.
asking you. But anyway,
Yeah.
Also that's the first thing that comes to mind.
That's so weird, Jayne. You were telling me earlier that you wanted to work with me more than
Well, you know what? That's so weird, Ken, because you just read my mind, and I was going to say, and of course, I would have liked to just listen to Ken with his Klingon, like just be there, and so I would have liked to have done more. I never got to talk to you, really. You just said killer.
It was a very special thing serving under Ken, serving under Cole. The character was so magnificent, and standing there when he was speaking Klingon and gave you an order, like I wasn't acting. It was just like, okay, I'll go get it.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, it's so amazing, Ken.
It was so beautiful, and those moments with you on that ship, Ken, were just remarkable.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, David. Thank you. I'll send you a check tomorrow.
Send him a t-shirt.
Yeah.
I have actually a quick addendum question for Jayne. What is your favorite Cornwell one-liner?
Oh, she had, gosh, that's really hard to pull right out, because she had some great lines. Oh, wow. I love when she says to Pike, oh God, if I can remember the exact line. Sometimes things go out of my head at the last moment. But when she says to Pike, the reason, that we didn't have you go into the war is because we wanted to save the best, and then I said, now get off my ass and get back to work, or something right after saying that to him. That was fun, a fun turn. But I had so many good lines.
Yeah.
God, I had so many good lines. I had good lines with Jason when he came off a ship once, and I would kind of, I should say not Jason, I should say his character, but I would like, kind of cut him off. Yeah, I had some good lines.
Yeah.
My very first English lines.
That's right.
Jayne. That's how I always feel like we're connected.
We are. We are. But it would have been fun to do. You should have gotten to know me better on your ship before, you know, you take me prisoner, but then you didn't really get to know me like L'Rell did.
We could have had a whole family.
Yeah, we could have. The three of us could have like.
Yeah, I could have come out of your vagina and said,
There we go. He brought this up on the cruise.
What? He brought it up on the cruise.
Yes, this was, yep. That as Tenavik, but technically it's not true because I.
Oh, right.
Tenavik was grown ex utero. Again,
that's right.
Oh, yeah.
Which I actually saw as like a thing that they're trying to develop. I don't know. We'll talk about this later. But
that
panel
also reminds me of
yeah,
exactly. We should have a second panel.
Yeah.
That reminds me real quick of the Deep Space Nine. A baby gets taken from one character and put into another to finish carrying the baby. But that anyway. Yeah.
Oh, good old Star Trek. We like to.
Yeah. There, Star Trek is ahead of its time because you said it's starting to happen. We're so short on time, but I do want to ask one more question, and I'm sorry for not getting to all the questions. There are great questions from the chat, but I do want to get back to these language questions because they're so juicy. So I'll try to condense them into one. First part is, what is Miss Stewart's opinion? I love that, Miss Stewart. Our Klingon teacher, Miss Stewart. What is your opinion on the proliferation of online Klingon translation services? And what do you feel about Duolingo's Klingon program? I know part of this, you're involved in that. And are services outside of the Klingon Language Institute reliable or accredited? So can you give us an overview of like the state of Klingon language right now?
Oh, wow. Online translators is a great topic. Really the only one that's functional at all is Bing Translate. I worked on that, but still I would recommend it for entertainment value only. It will translate things, completely bizarrely. Once there was a guy that posted a picture of a card on an engagement ring, and the card said the Klingon Jivok erbe, which means I do not trust myself. And we were all like completely puzzled until someone figures out that if you type "marry me" into Bing Translate, that's what comes out the other side.
No.
Usually it's just gibberish. Very rarely does it mean something, useful or even close to what you wanted to say. And almost all online translators just go to Bing and re-spew that output, possibly from an earlier version of Bing. Duolingo, on the other hand, is put together by a team from the Klingon Language Institute. And while some things have to be simplified, it is the real language, and you can experience the same nightmares as the actors had, because the female voice on Duolingo is me. And well, I haven't always had the best audio equipment, and I make mistakes. You can get that in all its glory and learn to speak Klingon pretty much the same way these people did.
So awesome. So adding to that question, is there any way, so I know there's a Klingon Language Institute course as well. So there's the Duolingo, and then there's actually a course that I have been taking where you can learn the grammar of Klingon in units, which is great for my brain. Is there a way to learn the written Klingon alphabet? Is there any type of course out there? And also someone wants to know specifically, how would one go about writing by hand in the Klingon alphabet? For example, with a ballpoint pen. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Or any advice you can give people who want to learn how to write in Klingon?
Yeah, wow. The Klingon language is called Picard, or the writing system. It is completely phonetic. So if you know how to write it using the Latin alphabet, then there's one Picard graph for the tli, the tl, and there's one Picard symbol for krai, the capital Q, and so on. So you just need to learn how to shape the letters. There are people that specialize in doing the calligraphy, and I'm going to look for, I don't know if there's a course, but there's probably a diagram, like where you start each letter or some recommendations. I'm going to look for that, and I'll put it up on Twitter later.
Yes, Thank you so much. Can you tell us your Twitter right now, just so we can people can find
Oh,
you
it
later?
is. I'm gonna have to look at it. I think it's Canada Aviatrix. It was gonna go out with the publicity.
Great. Yes,
yes.
it did. Yes.
Yeah, Canada Aviatrix.
Wonderful. Great. So keep an eye out, people who want to keep learning Klingon. Follow Robyn on Twitter for that info, and also go to the Klingon Language Institute website. It's super great, and the resources are amazing. Let me just look. I think that's. How about we just do a round of as we wrap out. Tell me what are some of the really positive. What's one really positive thing that being a Klingon or working in Klingon or working with Klingons has brought to your life? And then also tell us if you have your social media or a project that you'd like to plug or send us to. So go for it, one at a time.
I think my experience as a Klingon was very much a trial by fire. I was learning a new language and learning a new craft, and there were incredibly challenging days and upsetting days, and there were incredibly positive, thrilling days. And through it all, I kind of had to embrace sort of the Klingon ideals of loyalty and courage and strength and valor. And so in many ways, as I sort of walked through that gateway, being a Klingon helped me be a better actor, and it's helped me be a better person. So I think it was like this amazing opportunity that I'm so grateful to have had that experience, because it's changed me and it's opened doors for me, and I'm glad, I'm grateful for it, as difficult and overwhelming and wonderful as it was.
Great, thank you.
Star Trek was my first TV gig, and I was terrified. But it was such a gift. Just like, I think it'll remain one of the greatest gifts of my life, to be thrown in and feel such love and support from all angles, and be shown by example, like how to do what is probably one of the hardest things you can do in our world, which is acting in a fictional language in a prosthetic on the first season of like a who knows how much money, just like there was a ton of pressure, but it was such a great lesson for me in letting people support you, and watching in wonder as all of these people did their thing.
For me, it's always been the people. Like, I learned the language because I adore languages. And then I went to a meeting of the Klingon Language Institute, and I was like, wow, like even if I never spoke this language again, I'd want to come back and meet these people. And they're people that have the spare brain power and the lateral thinking and the silliness to learn a language that really has no functional use. And so it means they're interested in all kinds of things, and their brains are all over the place. And you see how fantastic the people that have learned it as part of their craft are. And it just continues to open opportunities to meet amazing people.
Who's next?
Well, I didn't get to work as a Klingon, but working with Klingons, I would say the biggest blessing was, I second this, meeting these wonderful people and watching them work. All I had to do was speak in English. I mean, I had long things to memorize, but then I would look in awe. But just making friendships and being able to work with everybody was just great. The whole thing, but the Klingons in particular. Mary and Ken, I worked with you the most. Everybody. I remember thinking Claire was so beautiful. That scene, I was like,
yeah.
Who's that beautiful Klingon? With the I don't know, the chain. It was so beautiful.
I saw, actually, I don't know if maybe she's watching, but I saw the most beautiful cosplay. I wish I remembered your handle. If you're watching, it was unreal. So
beautiful.
I second third, fourth, all of these statements. I think everyone's articulated it so beautifully. I mean, it feels like words that I would say about the whole experience. Just adding to that, yeah, just to be in this space right now, the fact that we were able to come together today and celebrate everybody. Yeah, it's just changed my life. I know everyone's saying that, but everyone here in this room has made a huge impact on me as an artist and as a person. And L'Rell's journey from thinking she's no one to having to ascend into the mantle of leadership is a journey that I hope I'm continuing to go on. And I'm just grateful that I had a character to inspire me to be a better person. But most importantly is the community, all these people here and everyone watching and everyone on Twitter and everyone I've met at conventions. It's just the most incredible gift at this point in my career.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Love you, Mary.
Love you, Can.
Yeah, the whole experience has been the biggest gift for me. But if I want to relate it specifically to the Klingon culture, one of my biggest takeaways that I come back to is that just have an open ear and open heart to other cultures and other species. I constantly ask myself that question, playing Kol and Kol-Sha, because they're considered villains for the show. But as an actor embodying these characters, they were just trying to protect their own culture. And I think it's always good to understand and ask yourself the question, even though I don't agree with this person or that person, I want to try to understand where they're coming from. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways from embodying a Klingon. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's beautiful. They say that in storytelling, that new light always comes out of the dark. And I think, a lot of people would judge the Klingon culture as sort of being the darker force, versus the Empire. But it's really something to sort of, see what's emerging out of that. And I'm just so inspired by the creativity of the fans. As you said at the beginning, Ken, this has really grown in the imagination of the fans and taken on a life in the real world. So, what starts as an idea and creative imagination is actually very real and very potent in the world. And I think storytelling can offer the world hope or context when we're confused or don't know how to approach the world as it's changing. And I'm very grateful to have been invited, because as a 5-year-old child, watching Captain James T. Kirk and Spock and Bones and Uhura, my imagination exploded. And to find myself, 30 odd years later, 40 odd years later on a film set where this was happening was mind-blowing.
Amazing. This has been such a gift to get to spend this time with you and hear you all tell your stories. So thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you to everyone in chat who has been asking questions and also just here present to witness this awesomeness. And this is the end of our day of honor. And I just want to thank every single guest who is here today. I want to thank the Stream Punks, Star Trek Online, Eagle Moss Hero Collector, Modifius, and of course, Q Times. Thank you so much, Jake and Q Times, for hosting us here today. You can come back to this channel Mondays at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time 3 times out of the month, you'll see Clear Skies, which is the Starfleet/Federation Star Trek Adventures campaign that we run, the Streampunks run. And then the 4th Monday of every month, you're going to see in that same time slot, Blood of the Void, which is our all Klingon campaign. You guys have really inspired me in my own Klingon, character exploration here. So once again, just thank you. And also, as an actor, I'm super inspired by all of you and the hard work that every single one of you has put into your work. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful night, everyone, and just spread love and joy and honor into the world. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kapla!
Kapla!
Kapla!